Butterfly, butterfly, pretty butterfly. When I see you flap your wing, I know when it's time for spring. Butterfly, butterfly, pretty butterfly.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Honest Participants Only. Hearing my goddaughter sing that always makes me smile, no matter what, and especially that kind of, she gives it a bit of welly at the end. If you stick around to the end of the show, you will hear her sing it again for the outro. Today we're going to be discussing mindset, yeah, because I can't speak, mindset as a tool for success. Stick around if you want to find out what we think about that. Let me introduce you to the panel. So today we're speaking to Andria. Hi, Andria.
Hi.
We're speaking to Renu. Hi, Ren.
Hello.
And we're speaking to Belinda. Hi,
Hi,
Belinda. I'm moving myself around. I don't like to be on the top of everybody looking down. So this is my panel for today. They are amazing. It is an accident that everybody on this panel is a woman, but actually it's probably the universe. So we like this, we celebrate it. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, everybody. So Andria, tell us a bit about who you are.
So in my professional career, I'm a HR professional. I recently qualified with my level 7 CIPD. So I help businesses implement processes and deal with all the HR stuff, trying to bring in a modern twist to it as well. And then in my personal life, I'm also a life coach and business owner.
It sounds like you do it all, and I don't know how you have the time, but actually everyone on this call, funnily enough, is one of those people who does it all. So thank you, Andrea. Great to meet you. Belinda, tell us about yourself.
So yeah, a bit about me. I have been youth mentoring for about 4 or 5 years now. I've worked in schools across Birmingham, London. It's been absolutely amazing. And as of recent, I've gone into schools to deliver talks and to be a speaker, which has been absolutely amazing as well, kind of helping young girls. For my career, I work with a company that delivers programs to young girls in schools across Birmingham. So I've been putting together programs, which has been also amazing. And aside from that, I kind of work in digital marketing. So that's something that came from the pandemic. I have no background in marketing. It was just something that I love to do. And I'm such a strategy person. So now I help people kind of make websites and make books and planners and kind of develop their online brand. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
That's amazing. I'm making a note based on something you said because I want to come back to it because it's really key in thinking about mindset as a tool. Thank you. Clearly another person who does it all. Renu, nice to meet you. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you for having me. So it's really hard to, like we were saying earlier, how to actually describe what you do, because sometimes it can be a lot of things, but I'm a digital content producer working at the BBC. So I basically create social media content to promote all different parts of the BBC. I'm also a radio presenter and I've presented on Asian Network as well. I have a podcast that has kind of been left to the side a little bit, but I can still add podcast there to my list maybe. Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm just a all-round creative, still trying to figure out where I'm going, but that's where I'm at right now.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I think it's really important, especially for this platform and this medium and the way we're doing this, for you to have put on all your hats and said, well, this is who I am. Because when we think about mindset, it's kind of about identity as well. And the reason I say that is because everybody has different ways of dealing with things. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, and it's going to come up on the screen. I haven't actually put it in a banner yet, so I'm pretending that I've got all of these sentences to say while I do that. There. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what thought does the phrase mindset as a tool for success bring to you? That makes no sense, but you know what the question is. What thought comes to mind when you think of the phrase mindset as a tool for success?
I think for me, mindset as a tool for success, I kind of word it backwards in terms of like, in order to be successful, you have to have the right mindset. And it's how your attitude towards things, you know, in order to be successful, which actually means different things to different people. You have to have the right mindset for it. And I think that's what it is. It's about your attitude towards things. You know, if you're a business owner, I've had a few businesses myself, and my mindset towards having a business, being in particular situations, doing particular things, if I don't have the right mindset, I'm going to go in the wrong way. So I think it's understanding what success means to you, but understanding that the way that you think about your attitude towards it is very, very, very important.
Absolutely. And you said something there. You said the right mindset. We're going to come back to that, because I know you're talking about mindset being very personal for each person, but I would love to know from each of you what the personal kind of, what is your right mindset, and does that change? Thank you so much. Ren, what comes to mind when you think about mindset as a tool for success?
I don't know. I find it very vague, that kind of phrase, because I think a positive mindset is a great attitude for success, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a tool. Like in this, I think it's something that will help you, but everyone will have their own mindset. Like it's very personal to each person, and there's an idea that you've got to have this right mindset. And like, yes, there is particular attitudes that I think we need to have maybe in the workplace and try and nurture a more positive way of thinking. But I don't know, it's mindset as a tool for success. I think even success, it's like, it's very different to different people. Like someone's idea of success might be stacking shelves, and someone's idea of success might be being an entrepreneur. Like, and they might have very similar mindsets, or they might have very different mindsets. So I think it's very dependent on each person. But I would probably say like nurturing a positive mindset is an attitude for success, perhaps. But I don't know. I when I think of tools, I think of skills. Like I think of like having, for me, it's like editing skills, presenting skills. Like maybe a mindset is a tool, but I see it as like it's more of an attitude that helps drive those things. Because if I have the right attitude, then I will find those, make it my priority to do other things that add to my toolbox. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I always think of like adding skills to my toolbox, but I don't necessarily think adding mindset to my toolbox. But then maybe you guys will like question me on that.
So before I come to you, Andrea, to answer the same question, this is why I said that and if you see me looking from side to side, I've got different screens where I'm making notes or doing whatever or looking for the next question. But there was something that Belinda said right at the top, and she said she's a strategy person. And that's so with what you were just saying, I was thinking about the fact that having a strategy or being nature versus nurture, I was born like this, could actually fall into that kind of mindset and tools thing that you're talking about. But also, if it is just nature, then actually you wouldn't see it as a tool, would you? Because I was born like this. So why, I haven't worked hard at this. I haven't developed a strategy that will take me from A to B. It is just the way it is. And I think you're absolutely right with regards to the fact that it is a broad term. It really is.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that by the end of this conversation, we don't have to come up with a definitive answer for anybody. I'm hoping by the end of the conversation, though, we will have delved into it a little bit more, and maybe even ourselves will be a bit clearer about that. So thank you. Andrea, same to you. What do you think of
me? Sorry. For me, I agree with both Belinda and Ren in terms of what they've said. But I think a lot of the time we forget to sort of use our mindset as part of getting to that final destination. So we'll do all the physical aspects of a plan to get to where we need to do. For example, if you've got an exam, you'll sit and revise and do all those physical aspects. But how much work do you actually put into yourself and your own mind? Because if you're sat there thinking, I can't do this, or you're procrastinating, in essence, that mindset can hold you back and actually stop you from getting to that success. So for me, it's all about working on that mindset. Your mind is a muscle. So just as you go to sort of the gym and work on sort of your legs, your arms and whatnot, it's important to also work on your mind.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And it actually brings me to something that I noted again as we were speaking, even before we started to record the show. It's something you said, Ren. You said about developing that positive mindset. And you went to say something, but I think you changed your sentence towards the end. And it triggered me to think the opposite of a positive mindset, though, is not a negative mindset. Do you agree, or what do you think? Is the opposite to a positive mindset a negative mindset?
I would say so.
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
And again, that's me doing that isn't me going,
Yeah.
you're wrong. That's just my thinking face.
I mean, for me personally, it's like I feel that I have like a scale, and if I'm in a negative mindset, it's not positive. So, and I can, when I'm in positive, I know I'm not, maybe there's areas where there are some positives, which actually could relate to what you're saying, because not everything, you might not have a negative attitude towards everything. But for me, if I'm in a negative mindset, other things are triggered by that mindset and kind of are tarnished by that negative attitude. Whereas when I start to think, do you know what, I don't really care what people think, and I'm just gonna do what I feel and not be bogged down with getting things perfect, then I find that actually relates into everything else. So I do think there is a positive and negative, for me anyways.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Belinda, what do you think? Is the opposite of a positive mindset negative mindset?
I'm gonna say I think you can have a positive mindset and a negative mindset, but I don't think it's bad and good. I think, you might go through things or might be in a situation where you might have a negative attitude towards that, a negative mindset towards that, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. We go through so many things in our life, we deal with so many situations, we can't expect to always be positive, like, yes, no problem, I just writ off my car, let me be positive. Like, no, like, you're gonna have a negative mind. You're gonna be like, oh, now I have to buy a new one, I have to do this and like, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like, we're human, we go through emotions, we're going to be negative sometimes, but I think it's important just in terms of how you get out of that, how you get yourself out of that negative mindset.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I was kind of getting at, and it's really interesting hearing you answer that, because the example you used, Belinda, of writing your car off, I don't think that not having a positive mindset in that moment means that you're automatically in a negative mindset. I think there's a gap in between that is realistic. And it's a realistic, actually, this is a proportionate response to the thing that is happening to me. However, people who live in that space of chin up, pull your socks up, let's do it, will see you as having a negative mindset. They will see you as being like, no, just, you can't dwell in that space. Whereas me, and I know Ren, potentially you, and probably the other two of you, we're much more a kind of, no, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling in that moment, because that's healthy and that's okay. So, Andrea, what do you think about that?
I agree. I think for me, last year was a big challenge for me, and I wasn't in my usual sort of positive mindset. I really had to step back and evaluate life. And I think for me, if I didn't allow myself to be negative and feel those emotions, I just wouldn't have got through it, because when you're constantly positive, it can have a negative effect on you, because you keep going and going and going, you eventually burn out and you're ignoring everything that's going on. So I think sometimes you do just need to step back, and if you need to cry, if you need to be angry, if you need to worry, then that's what you need to do. And I think it's healthy to have that balance, and it helps you build up to that positivity where you're like, right, okay, I've felt that anger now, this is what I'm going to do, this is the solution, and you pick yourself back up.
Yeah. One of the ways I met both you, Belinda, and you, Andrea, was on an app called Clubhouse. And it was an audio app. The only way we kind of connected with each other is by our profiles. Anyone could put anything. I'm an expert in the moon. You know, you could just put your profile out there. And so when you spoke, what you were trying to do was convey the expertise that you would put in your profiles. And I found that a lot of people came across initially as very kind of positive. No, and you must do this, and let's have a mastermind class, and let's do this, and no, come share your problems, I'll tell you what to do. And every time I would sit in one of those rooms, after a couple of months of listening, I realized there was an element missing, and that element was humanity. There was a kind of, this is all you have to do is put these steps in place. And I was like, always the kind of voice of dissent. I would be, well, no, but what about? And what about the healing? And what about grace for ourselves? And what about the damage that constantly picking myself back up right in this moment does? Because we have to pick ourselves back up eventually, absolutely. But it needs to be when it's right for me. Otherwise, I end up right back in this place of depression or whatever it is, because I haven't given myself time to heal. So my next question to you, I guess, is, do you think that having a positive mindset and giving yourself grace is different professionally, so in your careers and what you're thinking about when you're thinking about where you're trying to get to personally when you're thinking about life and what you want to achieve?
Oh, that question's put me on the spot now.
I feel like it's really, I really struggle to like split those two people apart. Like my professional self is kind of my personal self. Like especially in the workplace, I don't like to portray myself like I'm professional. Like obviously, in situations you might, but I try my hardest to still be the same person. So I think my mindset, how I would treat a friend is, I would, like, my values will stay the same in the workplace. So I've forgotten your question, but the thing about the personal, the professionals, kind of, that's what I've leaned into. What was the question again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely parts. I find there's things in my professional life that I'm really good at. Like, I'm good at finding opportunities and going for stuff. And then if it comes to like relationships, that's a different matter. Like I am so bad at putting myself out there when it comes to that. So maybe there's a mindset that it's the same thing, but I don't transfer into personal. But I try at least to not be two different people if I can.
Yeah.
And do you know what I would probably add to that as well, is that I think for our careers, like, we get to build up the version of ourselves that we want to. Whereas, like you said about relationships, I'm exactly the same. I don't put myself out there. I'm in my house all the time. But I think that's based on our experiences from when we're younger. So I feel like our career, we're able to build up and say, okay, this is what we want to do, this is what we don't want to do. Whereas we're affected in our personal life by the things that we've experienced in our life. So we have to reprogram our mindset in our personal life, whereas our career, we're building on our mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of like you're a bit more in control of it sometimes in your career.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So this is what's really interesting for me, because everything you're saying makes sense. And every person in this room right now is part of our minoritized community. And I bring that up not to highlight it or other us, but actually I bring it up because Ren, I smiled inside when you said you could be Ren at work and at home. And that is such a beautiful thing, because we're finding so much that there are more of us who don't realize that we can be that thing. And not every workplace is safe to do that in. So let's not pretend that it is. You know, they want to tell you it is, but you get there and it's like, no, we need you to be different, Shae. But I say that because fundamentally, when we're thinking about work and personal, there is this quite sharp divide that we're like, well, this is who I'm going to be. But I think for myself, I, like you, have decided you're going to just get Shae, because I have my own business. I've worked for myself. My brand is exactly who I am. So that's who you're going to meet, which is why before we kind of press record on this, I was like, I want us to have fun, because also that's part of who I am. And that's what's really important. We might be talking about deep themes, or we might be boring or whatever, but bringing us into the conversation and our characters and our identities is what makes this special and unique and different. Would you say that there are two sides of you, Andrea, in terms of how you deal with mindset, or would you agree with kind of the rest of us?
I think my values stay the same, especially going into HR, sort of going through the employee life cycle myself and having part-time jobs. I wanted to go in there and actually show empathy, show I had values, showing that I actually had time for people, and if there was nothing I couldn't do, actually take the time to sit and explain, I understand where you're coming from, but I can't do this. I think for me, it's very difficult. So I carry my values, but then because I am sort of HR and I have to remain impartial, I do sort of keep myself to myself at work, because I have to be professional, especially if I'm going into certain meetings, and some of them have involved things like safeguarding and with the council and stuff. So if I've sort of had a laugh and a joke with a certain employee and then it's gone to something serious, it's difficult for me to let down that barrier. So I'd say in sort of my 9 till 5 job, my values stay the same, but I do separate myself and keep myself to myself, because I feel like I sort of have to.
It's so interesting. Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it, Ren.
It's making me think, like, even though I would say my values remain the same, in certain situations or maybe like meetings you have, how much of yourself do you like rein back, or like, because obviously it depends how much of you see yourself, like how I am with my friends. Am I exactly that same person in a meeting? Probably reined back a bit. But if it came to like a situation or a decision or something I felt uncomfortable about, like I'm someone who does like to speak up and be honest about something. Would I still do that? I probably would do that. But then you have the added stuff that's like, what's the consequence? Like, I don't want to lose my job. I don't like. So yeah, it's a really interesting question. I feel like I'm going to go away and keep thinking about it.
Yeah, it brings me on to my next question perfectly, Ren. So actually, thank you so much for that. You know, we deal with difficult situations in life generally, and what we know typically is that women are celebrated for their resilience, and Black women in particular are like, yeah, you're the strongest, which is why we don't get, again, proportionate healthcare and things like that. But speaking as us in the room, should we be celebrating resilience in the same kind of way? Is there a detrimental element to keeping going despite what might be happening for us?
I feel like sometimes it has a negative impact. So last year I worked in a workplace that was very detrimental to my mental health, and I kept going until I essentially found another job, and it was really difficult for me. And I feel like until I left and got out of that environment, although I did it and I stayed resilient, which I was proud of myself for doing, because I had no other choice sort of financially at the time to sort of just get up and leave. After that, I think it had a massive detriment on my mental health, because when you're dealing with something negative and you're dealing with the impact on it, when you keep going and you don't take that time to sort of step back, I feel like it sort of follows you after. So yes, in some cases I got through it. I stood proud for myself. I didn't show them that it sort of got to me, and I ended up actually winning a court case, and I got to speak my truth in the end. But going through that at the time, it didn't help being resilient. In a sense, I probably needed to let out a lot of that emotion whilst it was going out, rather than sort of having to relive it twice.
And there's a follow-up question to that, and when you come to answer the question, Renu and Belinda, feel free to answer it as well. But as a follow-up question to what you just shared with us, Andria, is there a difference between you not having a choice, so whether it's because financially you have to get on with this, and actually you just choosing to go to the end to kind of see this through? Is there a difference between being able to make that choice?
I feel like sometimes there can be, but sometimes there can't, because I did think about it, but it's sort of weighing up sort of my emotions and how I felt. If I just went off that, my choice probably would have been a lot different. But then in the worst case scenario, and being realistic in terms of paying for bills, paying for food and that sort of thing, petrol, car insurance, if I couldn't have found another job for another 10 months, let's say, then what would I have done? And it's sort of balancing that. I think another big aspect of it, I worked from home at the time, so had I had to go physically into the office, I think it would have been much more difficult, and I don't think I would have coped, but I sort of had that leeway in a sense.
Yeah, understood. Thank you so much. Belinda, should we still celebrate resilience?
This is like a 50-50 one, like off my own experiences, and you know, Andrea was talking about in the workplace and stuff like that, and I've worked in some very big businesses that were very toxic, and having to be resilient when people are continuously pushing you down, and then people are saying, you know, well, you got through it, you know, you got through it. Like, that's not something to celebrate. I shouldn't have been in that situation to have had to get through it. And I feel like, other than workplace, like, my mom is a very resilient person, and that's because she's had to be. She was a single parent. She had to be resilient. She had to pick herself up, and that was instilled in me. And resilience sometimes can come out as independent woman, and I can do everything for myself. And I was like in this mindset for a long time, and only recently I'm like, no, like, I shouldn't have to be strong. Like, why is that celebrated that I have to be a strong woman? Like, I have emotions, I go through things, I'm allowed to be down there. That's fine. And I feel like we should teach people and give people the tools to be resilient. But I'm celebrating resilience. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's one of them weird ones. It depends on the situation. It depends on why, but I don't know. It's one of them weird ones, isn't it?
I hear you. You saying that reminded me of a lesson that my aunt has had to learn throughout the pandemic. Throughout my whole life, my family, my grandma, they've all been very like, oh, your arm's dropping off, that's fine, you'll be fine, go to work. And it's because back then, with our cultures, because our cultures overlap in quite a few ways, they didn't have a choice. They had 7 children at home, a husband who was the allotment or whatever. You had to get it done. And I think that mindset is still stuck in us. And so we're probably in this generation where we have more choice. We're able to balance things, to figure things out more than we ever have before. And we're having to challenge what we were taught and the why with what we want and how we're trying to envisage a new future. So what do you think? What do you think about resilience, Ren?
It is a difficult one, but like what you just said about generational change, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were saying about how our generation now is, you know, all questioning our whys, like what are we doing? What are we really wanting to be on this path and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes if I kind of say those things to my parents or my mum, I feel stupid because I'm not stupid, but it's just something that they won't completely grasp because she's like, you know, you're doing okay. Like, why do you need to keep? It sounds like overthinking, and it's because, like you said, that it's like my mum's the same, single parent. She's, you know, created her own business on her own, like had no money. Like she to me is the idol of resilience. So I think I've always felt like I need to be like that, and I've struggled to be that same pillar of resilience because that we live in completely different generations and different times and different jobs and different industries, and so it's I think resilience is like a mark that will be very different to every person. Like I don't think we can taint the same success. Kind of everyone's not got the same, it's not going to be at the same level, or everyone's going to be very different. But I think there's tools that you can use that can help your resilience. Like for me, sometimes it's, you know, like journaling, for example, for me is something that really helps my resilience because it's like me facing, okay, what is going on? What could I do better? What do I want to improve? And it's like sometimes, like we were saying earlier, tapping into maybe what is a negative mindset. Can you turn that into a positive mindset? Can you, how quickly can you change your reaction to something? To me, that's resilience. That's me like facing up to perhaps a previous way I would have thought and changing that. So I think it's very personal. And I think to me, when I do see those changes, I celebrate that resilience because I'm proud of that change. But that resilience mark will keep moving. So I think it's I'm not sure it should be like how it can be celebrated in the workplace because, like I said, it's very different to each person. But yeah, I think if you're improving, you need to celebrate it.
Yeah, and quite often in the workplace, it's used as a bullying tactic to get you to continue on a path that doesn't work for you. And that's really sad. But it's typically about growth. Like you say, I've grown. Last time, 2 years ago, I would have done something entirely different in this situation. Now, what matters to me might have moved. And so therefore, I'm not even giving it that energy. When I do one-to-one podcasts, so when I have one person on, there's like a format to my podcast. And one of the questions I do ask them is, and it's totally gone from my mind, imagine. It's not even slightly there. I literally was about to say it. Never mind, it will come back. But what you did say brought me to some research I was doing for this particular podcast. And there are questions that are typically told to people to ask yourself these questions when assessing your ability to be resilient. So, and I'm not asking you to answer them. I'm just putting the questions out and then we can have a discussion about whether they make sense or not. Because I think when you said one of these things, which kind of makes sense. So how are you making decisions? Are they process-based, outcome-based, or something else? How do you process and manage your emotions? What can you do about what you're struggling with? Do you employ critical thinking methods? Where can I position myself to increase the chances of meeting my goals? Who can I network with or contact to increase the chances of meeting my goals? And what can I do more of to make people notice my skills and talents? Now, before I let you all respond to what you think of that list, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works and say, generally, those questions are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But to somebody who might be dealing with a personal matter in the workplace, so for instance, if my depression is the problem, you asking me who can I network with is not going to do a darn thing for me. I have no motivation to network with myself in the mirror, much less kind of, you know. So yeah, so I came up with my own few questions, which are more about, and you can ask yourself these questions as well. How do you feel? What's your motivation? When did things change for you? What options do you feel you have? What do you need to move from where you are to where you want to be? Same questions, right? Totally different phrasing, totally different energy, which allows people to feel seen, supported, and potentially able to pull up their socks in their time. So, yeah, what do you think about the kind of, like I said, I went on the internet, I found all this research. That is the theme across the internet when you type in anything about mindset. What do you think about the kind of messaging that's out there, Ren?
Oh, firstly, I like, I didn't expect it to come to me first. I liked the way that you phrase your questions, first of all, because I feel like it makes it feel like if I was on the other side of that being asked those questions, I'd feel like I'm not a problem, like I haven't got a problem. It's like, okay, how can we fix it, rather than like making it seem like feel worse than I already do. But in terms of mindset, I feel like there's a lot out there in terms of mindset. It's like quotes everywhere. There's another book about something, and I mean, you've got to just take it with a pinch of salt and read those different things in some ways, because understand that there's different ways of thinking about it, but there are particular ways of thinking that might resonate with you more. But I think a few years ago I was like quite pleased seeing a lot of talk about confidence and mindset, and I actually got my own confidence and mindset coach, and that really helped me. But then I found recently that there's so much, it's almost like it's become a trend, which is good because it's making it there's a positive, it's showing that it's important to change yourself and improve, but then it makes it very overwhelming to even know where to start, because there's so much out there and there's so much different messaging. But I would personally say the best way to do it is get a pen and paper and write your thoughts down, because you can go to someone and they'll give you their 2 pence worth, and it will help to soundboard of someone. But I just think that to me is the best way to understand your own mindset, because in a one-to-one session with someone, they will help at that point. But what about after that? Like, what about when you're in a situation? So, but the one book I did read once that I think has had negative. Some of my friends have read the same book and they don't like it. But I like, is it Mark Manson's? I'm not going to read it because there's a swear word in his title, but it's like Ways to Not Give an F or something.
Oh yeah. I've seen it, not read it.
Yeah, and some people don't like him because he's quite like cuts out all the cuts out all the nonsense,
all the
straight to the point. But yeah, I would just say there's a lot out there, but you can find your own way if you just kind of get to grips with how you work, and you can do that through just writing.
Absolutely.
I think.
And it's interesting because we've got someone on the call who is, it's not a call, Shae, you're not on Zoom. We've got someone on the podcast who works in HR. And it's interesting to me what you were saying before, Andrea, about how you have to take self out of it a little bit. But would you be able, do you think, in your capacity as someone who works in that department, be able to ask my questions in a way that validated someone's feelings, or do you feel that you would be much more pressured from the business to ask what have you done about it, prove it, show me, what do you think?
I'm in quite a fortunate position where I run the department on my own, so I sort of have the choice to sort of implement certain strategy and processes. So before anybody sits with a staff member, if it's not me, it's me delegating it. So I'm very specific with how things are done, even to the point where someone may have done something wrong and it's an investigation. I always like to get their side, and one of the biggest sort of feedback that I've got from it is that I sit and listen and I don't interrupt, and I actually take on board what the individual is saying, which is something I'm really proud of, because it's something I've not had in the workplaces, and I do a lot on mental health. So I'm in a position where I can offer wellbeing drop-ins and schedule meetings where staff members can just sit and talk to me, whether they want to cry, moan, rant, whatever it is. I've created that safe space for them to just sit there and talk. So in that sense, obviously I stay professional, but I've still created that sort of space. So I'm fortunate in that sense. I know if I'd worked for a larger organisation where I wasn't sort of managing everything, I'd probably challenge quite a lot. There's times where I've had to challenge the director because he's questioned something I've put into place, but then I can always explain why I've done what I've done, and it is for the benefit of the employees, because for me it's important. You wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for them, so you need to nurture them, you need to take care of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. Belinda, you work with a lot of youth and particularly young girls.
Yeah.
So when you are trying to impress on them the importance of empowerment, the importance of knowing your mind and not being led and even not being manipulated, or any of the things you might speak to them about, do you find that they respond more to the touchy-feely, no, not touchy-feely, just the feeling, empathetic kind of approach, as opposed to, right, this is what you need to do, step 1, step 2, step 3. What have you found generally as you've gone around the country kind of speaking to girls?
You find that they have a lot of questions. So I like to lead a lot of my sessions with questions and open up the room for them to ask me questions, rather than me speak at them. I never like to do sessions like that. And you find that they have a lot of questions. A lot of times they just want someone to talk to. And it is really how you word things with these young girls. And I like to be quite creative with them. So a lot of times when we're speaking about things, they'll be doing something creative on paper. So they're not thinking about what they're about to say. And I've been doing that for a good couple of years, just really trying to understand and kind of switch up the way that I do things so it's tailored to the students. And in my recent role of like putting together the programs and stuff, I actually train coaches now. So all the training I wish I had, I can now support them in ensuring that they're doing that with students, that I'm doing that with them, so they know how to implement it with the students. I think it is the whole thing of a safe space and really truly understanding what that means. And for me, you know, I'm very, like I said, very strategy, and like the sessions, like this is what we do for the first 15 minutes and da. But a lot of times the first 15-minute task ends up taking up the whole hour. And if by the end of the session they have asked them questions thoroughly to themselves, they have discussed with each other and been able to ask me questions, and for me to answer it how they need me to answer it, my job is done. I think a lot of us, you know, we work with people that need real answers. And that's what I intend to give them, is the real deal in the nicest way possible, in a way that's not going to scare them. But sometimes the questions that you like simple questions, simply formed, sometimes them are the questions that really help somebody, rather than, I think what question you asked, that was just like, how am I supposed to know who to network with? It's not really the time now. So I think how you word things when you speak to other people, when you help other people, but how you speak to yourself is like the most important thing. Like I was doing a talk the other day at a girls' school for like 7, 8, 9, and 10 and 11 and the sixth form, and it was about my resilience story. And I was talking about different tools that I used when I was going through hardships, when I was like their age. And one thing I said was obviously the journaling, how I spoke to myself, but also who I surrounded myself with. Because when you're in that place of having a negative mindset or thinking negatively about something, sometimes you can get so far that you can't pull yourself out of it. And the only way sometimes you can is the people around you. So I think that's also super important, is how you talk to yourself, but how other people can also talk to you to help you get out of that place.
I love that. I love that. And it perfectly takes us on to the next question. And we're going to start going towards the end of the session now. I wish we could do this for a bit longer, but what have you learned about yourself and what you need to succeed over the last few years? So we'll as you were talking, we'll go with you, Belinda.
What have I learned about myself? I think since the pandemic, I think especially during the pandemic, I have always been a go, go, go person. Like in my career, business, I've always just been a go, go person. And I've never really sat with myself and really learned more about me and really reflected on my life. And, you know, I'm all about teaching people about growth mindset and having a growth mindset and being resilient, but I'm not teaching myself, and I don't want to put anything out there that I'm not doing myself. And I think, you know, about the what you need to succeed, like we mentioned, you know, success is different to everyone, and for me it was, you know, I want to be well known. You know, I want to be like the best of the best. Whereas success is a little bit different to me now. Success to me is being able to do things like this, like share my knowledge, travel and see the world, work from wherever I am. And I think because I've changed my mindset, because I've changed the way I think about and how I see things, how I view people, I'm a person who's always like reevaluating like where I am. Like my friend always like laughs at me. She says every week I'm doing like a rebrand. I'm always having a strategy meeting and she laughs all the time. But I'm always reflecting on, you know, the things that I've achieved this week, where I wasn't doing so well this week. I do find it quite hard to journal, just because I don't know, it's just a bit hard for me. I don't know what it is, but I always try to end the week by reflecting on my achievements, you know, what went well, what didn't, what are the things that I've learned this week and how I've been able to grow as a person. And I think we grow every single week. And I think for me, I try to implement a growth mindset, which means that I'm trying to always understand how I can grow. And I think that's the most important thing, you know, what I've learned about myself and what I need to succeed over the last few years is that for me, I'm always just wanting to grow, and that's in all different areas of my life. So hopefully that has answered the question.
100% has. Thank you so much. It's so funny you mentioned struggling with journaling. I struggle with affirmations, and I know they work for most people, but for me, standing in the mirror and being like, you go girl, you're the best, it just doesn't, I don't believe it. I more believe it when I'm sat here and I have an idea in my head and I'm like, let me get this down, and I read it back and I'm like, that's brilliant. It's more about me putting the things that are inside me out, even if it's just to me in a Word document. I've saved it now. And I put a post out the other day about those notebooks that you can see behind me, just saying, actually, you know, we're told not to go back and look into our past, but fundamentally, the past, walking those paths, going back through those notebooks, I realized how much of my genius would be lost if I hadn't gone back, because I was like, did I write that? That was great, you know. And so instead of the affirmations, for me, it is making sure I get the things that are in my head down, so that when I'm having a crisis of confidence, I can go back through them and have them, which is still me, it's just affirmations in a different way. I can have them lead me to where I'm trying to get to. So
it sounds like you like evidence. It's like you want the evidence. You want to see the evidence of what you've done. And
I will gaslight myself into believing that I am not enough if I do not evidence it. I literally will gaslight myself, the fire, all of the things, and I'll be like, Shae, it's you. No, most of the time, by the time we get to a stage where we are this astute or we have this much self-awareness, most of the time it's not us anymore. And it may have been in the past, but if you work on yourself and you're constantly reflecting, like you said, Belinda, actually, no, when you're thinking, oh, it's probably you're gaslighting yourself, move on, you know, get rid of it and move on. Because actually, even if it is you, so what? So what if the thing you're thinking might happen happens? Then you're going to move on. Still do it anyway. And again, I'm saying that so confidently here, but when I'm talking it to myself, I'm like, okay, Shae, I've got all of these social media posts that I've created for years. Have I put them out? No, because by the time I go into that folder and I'm like, right, what should I pull out today? I'm going, but this doesn't relate to anything. It relates to life. It relates to everything. Why do we do it to ourselves? So yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying affirmations don't work for me, but next. Ren, what have you learned about yourself and what you need to succeed over the last few years?
I think I've learned that you're not going to suddenly have everything in place. Like, there's not a point when you are going to be that level of success. Like, when I was, for years, I'd wanted to work for the BBC, and I tried and to apply, and then you get in, and then it's like, right, well, what's next? And, you know, that level keeps moving. And I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to be to where I want to be, which I've realized from speaking to other people who are at the level of success that I look up to, and they, you know, even they're kind of in the same position as like, I don't know where I'm going either. And I think I've realized that it is such a journey, and that you don't need to have everything in place. And actually, the majority of stuff I've done has been unplanned. Like, yes, there's been intention behind it. Like, when I look back at the Asian Network stuff I've done, people would say to me, oh, how have you done that? And then I'd realize, actually, I've been doing radio for like 5 years. Like, I have to remind myself that sometimes, that it's not just happened overnight. But at the same time, I didn't intentionally say I'm going to do this to get to that, and then I'm going to plan this. I've tried to plot things out and plan and like manifest in that way, and sometimes it just will happen when it happens. And that's something I have to remind myself constantly, that's like, you're not going to have everything right now. Like, even when we have the list of what we are, like, that's even a battle. It's like, okay, I want to be all those things now, I want to do everything now, why am I not there? But it's just like, chill out. I think actually reminding yourself that I'm doing all right. And people, I was thinking about this today, actually, my 18-year-old self when I started uni, what would she think of me now? And it's like, actually, yeah, I probably would be really proud. So you've got to just, like, I think in order to succeed, it's just actually reminding yourself of where you're at and not putting too much pressure on yourself to be at a certain point, because when you get to that point, it still won't be enough. So it's just be like, kind of like what Belinda was saying in terms of like where her idea of success is actually not, it's not, you're not focusing on particular points. It's being happy to travel, it's being happy to do those things, and just not too much pressure.
Thank you so much. And it makes so much sense. And I do feel that, and I've said this on a couple of my other podcasts, this is a digital record. So even when you go back in the future and you hear your words to that question, it will mean so much, and it may remind you of your why. Thank you. Andrea, what about you?
I think one of the biggest things I've learned, especially in the past sort of few years, is that sometimes you do need to lose yourself to find yourself again. I'm someone from a young age, and I think it's come from watching my parents work so hard, that I went to uni, I've done my masters, but I was always working either part-time or full-time alongside it. And then I had all these other ideas that I wanted to do, sort of my life coaching. I also make candles and wax melts, and I have all these ideas that I want to do, but it's not always feasible to put them in place because sometimes life hits you. I've struggled with a lot of sort of health issues in the past year and sort of family issues. I've had family members being unwell where I've had to really step up in my personal life, and sometimes all that pressure that I add on to myself, I sort of see it as oh, I'm a failure because this year I didn't manage to do that, or I wasn't consistent with this and it's too late. And I build this whole big picture that I can't do it because I didn't do it there and then. Whereas last year I really took a step back because I was forced to. And I feel like losing myself, I've actually found myself again and set myself up this year to do the things that I want to do. And I was actually looking at my journal from when I wrote my goals down for 2022. And when I ended the year, I sat and thought, I can't wait for this year to end. I'm ready for 2023. But a lot of my goals that I'd written down, I'd actually achieved. But with everything going on in life, being so busy, I completely forgot and thought, oh, I've just had a really bad year. But it wasn't as bad as I sort of thought. So for me, one thing I've really taken away is actually sitting and doing nothing sometimes and taking that time out to sit with myself, because it's so important. And I've been going to therapy and I keep saying to my therapist, I don't have time to relax. And when I try and relax, my mind's just going and going and going with all these ideas. Oh, I need to do that. Oh, I need to do this. But I've really sort of put myself first. And this week I've taken time off work and just sat and sort of reflected with myself, spent time with myself and had that rest. And it's amazing the change it's done. I think you need to force yourself sometimes. So for me, I've got my journey. I know what I want. I know where I need to get to, but there's no sort of time pressure on that. I think it's important to be present and enjoy life whilst I'm doing it, and in ensuring that I'm taking care of me as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You mentioned getting used to doing nothing. I think I may be taking that to the extreme. So I might need to motivate myself a bit more. I love doing nothing these days. Yeah.
Literally. The other day, I was on a podcast and the other woman, she was like, you know, like I see you doing all this on social media and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, listen, half the time I'm scrolling on TikTok. I said, I'll do my little post, but I'm scrolling on TikTok, I'm watching EastEnders, I'm watching Netflix. And like one last thing that I would probably say is like, don't compare yourself to other people when it comes to success. Don't do that. I think I was speaking with Andria, and, you know, last year for both of us, I think we didn't do what we wanted to do. But I think it's understanding that everything happens when it's supposed to happen. And like this year, like I'm so grateful, has already kind of been like, for me, like already, like, you know, being on this amazing podcast, doing other things as well. And I think success looks different to all of us. Like, please, everyone who's watching this, just don't compare yourself to anybody else. Like, just remember that, you know, there's a plan for you and that you will live your life how it's supposed to be lived, but just don't compare yourself to other people, whatever you do.
Belinda, this is hilarious to me. This is, I can see why everyone will know in just a moment. You will see why I've invited these three ladies in particular onto this podcast and onto this episode. So Belinda has just answered my final question. My final question. So I was going to say in 2 or 3 lines each, what would you say to anyone out there struggling with their motivation? So Belinda, is there anything you want to add on top of that?
Take time out for yourself. I think, like I said, I always wanted to kind of travel, and then I was like, no, I kind of like, you know, need to put my money into my business and stuff like that. And I felt that like it wasn't like, if you're struggling with your motivation, like really sit down and understand kind of like why you want to do this. Why is this important to you? You know, it's not every day that you're going to wake up and you're going to be motivated to do the thing that you're going to want to do, but it's building the skills, like building your mindset, building your resilience. It's about working on yourself. So you're not always going to be motivated, and that's okay. You know, all of us sitting here right now, we're not motivated all the time. Probably after this, we're all probably just going to go and watch TV, and then post on Instagram something that pretend that we did like a month ago, and it's just like everyone's life is what they want to make it out to be online. And it's just going back to that whole thing, just don't compare yourself. Your motivation will be different to my motivation. You're not always going to be motivated. It's your determination that is very, very important. Are you determined to do this thing? It's not going to happen overnight. It might not happen in a month. But if you know the things that you want to achieve, like Andrea said, there's not a time frame on the things that you want to achieve, but just know where you kind of want to go. It might not be where you're going to go. And I always say that, like, for me, I don't have goals. I have a direction, and the direction can kind of change. So hopefully them few tips will help the people watching.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Andrea, your kind of closing statement to anyone who is struggling.
I'd say be present, and I know that's something I used to say a lot on Clubhouse as well, but I think we either get so stuck in the past or so stuck in the future we forget to just be here. And sometimes it is just the simple things, and you can't sort of find motivation if you're not feeling good within yourself. So if it means going on a night out or booking that holiday, I started off this year by booking a weekend away with my cousins, and it was the best thing I sort of ever did, because you need that break, you need that time out. Or whether it is just taking a bath or going for a walk, do something that makes you feel good, because the better you feel, your motivation will sort of stem from there, and take it step by step. But don't forget to be in the moment where you're here now, because the past has already gone. It's already built you up to be who you are today, and the future's not here yet. You've still got control over that. And the other thing I'd just say quickly as well is there's a lot of external factors, and just remember who you are and your true authentic self, because no matter what's going on out there, no one can take away who you are. So just take care of you and put yourself first.
Thank you so much. Powerful stuff from all of you today. And last but not least, Ren, I'm coming to you. So
yeah, I know. I'm like, what else can I add to this now? There's such good answers. I would perhaps say finding what's right for you, and perhaps looking at what are the things that's actually limiting or hindering your motivation. So I know for me, sometimes if I'm on my phone too close to when I'm going to bed, then that's going to hinder me waking up in the morning, and I'm going to be less motivated throughout the day because I won't be able to go to the gym in the morning. Like everything gets, so there's, and I have to think, look, like what are the patterns that I am doing that are perhaps not good? Like what habits? Am I on my phone too much? Am I spending time with people who I'm not really enjoying spending time with? So perhaps just sitting with that, whether that is journaling for you or going for a walk, and finding that thing that is your way of relaxing. It might not be the way other people relax. Like your way of relaxing might be going on a run, or it might just be chilling in the bath. I like to dance. That is my thing to relax, like put some music on and just chill and clean and put everything in order. Like just, yeah. And once you kind of find your own groove, then you remember, okay, that's a tool that I can, like going back to the mindset as a tool, that is a tool that you can use to again and again. So I think, just finding what's right for you and looking at the patterns. Sometimes that's why I find journaling's good. I don't always do it every day, but through it, you can see patterns. Like I wasn't feeling good today because this, I wasn't feeling because this. And then you look back and you're like, oh, okay, that's a reason. Or I remember my coach once said, and it was a really good tool actually, that was like thought, feeling, action. Like you write down the thought that you've got, and then how is that making you feel? And what is the action that you're doing that's not great? You look back at it, how would you change that? Could you rephrase that? Like when I'm writing, I tend to write and then write back to myself. So say if I've written how I'm feeling, I might say, okay, this is how I think. You talk to yourself as if you're someone else speaking to you. So you have that better communication with yourself. So it's just what's right for you. And and it will come. And don't force it. It's, you know, it's your own journey.
It's perfect. Thank you so much. So just in wrapping up, I heard from all of you on the podcast today, mindsets can change. Assess your habits and processes. Write your feelings down. Think about your direction instead of a destination. Give yourself grace and work towards your legacy, your overall, who you want to be, what you want to be, where you want to go. And that sounds actually like great advice to me. So yeah, is there anyone that any of you want to kind of put on? We'd like to pay it forward just in a word or two. Are there handles, Instagram or whatever that you want to send people to? And then I'm going to come to you all to tell us where we can find you before we finally wrap up. So anyone that comes to mind? I mean, apart from each other, because I was recording a podcast recently, okay, it was this morning, and everybody on there was like, follow the other one, because they'd never met each other. So they were like, yeah, follow this one, which actually was brilliant. It didn't even occur to me. But yes, you're going to follow everybody here. Those watching and listening, you're going to follow everyone here shortly. But is there anyone else that you want to kind of fly the flag about? And there doesn't have to be.
Go on. You got one.
No, I was going to say, so I'm going to shout out my friend. I know she hates being shouted out, but I think her handle is Catherine F Official. I think she's on Twitter, but she works a lot with like mental health and like in VC, and she does like a lot of like talks and stuff, like really help people. You know, she's done a lot of things with like Apple and like McPin and stuff like that. And I think what she's doing is amazing, and I shout at her all the time because she doesn't put out enough content. So if I push people there, she has to post content. But no, what she's doing is amazing with the young people when it comes to mental health.
Wonderful. And we've got literally 2 minutes left. Andrea, anyone that you want to put forward?
It's someone I actually met at Belinda's networking event that's helped me in terms of my mindset and getting to the gym and working out. So it's Move with Mica. She does a lot of female empowerment classes and one-to-ones, but she posts like reels and stuff if people are looking into sort of getting into working out.
Excellent. And actually, Andrea, I'm going to ask you to let us know where people can find you just now.
Yeah, so my Instagram and TikTok is A Chat with Andrea for my life coaching services and content there. And then if you're interested in sort of candles, wax melts and that sort of stuff, it's _nostalgic sense.
Perfect. Thank you. Belinda, where can they find you? And I'm going to come to you, Ren.
So you can find me on Instagram, and I'm trying to do the TikTok thing, guys, at Belinda Kaurs, and LinkedIn at Belinda Kaur. And you can find my current business, BK Networks, on Instagram. So we do events and programs and fun stuff. So that's where Andrea has met a few people as well. So yeah, that's where you can find me, guys.
Excellent. Thank you. Ren, anyone to recommend, and then tell the people where they can find you?
2 people I'd probably recommend. My coach, which is Hattie McAndrews. She's great. She does workshops. She like writes loads of articles for different places, and yeah, she helped me a lot. And also there's another coach called Tiwalola, and she does like a Confidence in Killing It Academy, which I joined, and that's really great. So yeah, I would say them 2 are pretty good. But sometimes also there's a lot on social media. I would say that there's this pressure to like post and do a lot of stuff, especially someone working in social media. I would say I'm not so good at it, but also, yeah, I need to take a tip from you, Belinda, and look at what you're doing, because
honestly, look at what she's doing. It is awesome. But yeah, where can they find you?
You can find me Instagram, Ren_Chopra, LinkedIn, Renu Chopra. Yeah, those 2 places. Or you can find me on Facebook if you want. People do that.
Yeah, who uses Facebook? So thank you so much for coming on board today. It's been a fantastic episode. And all that's left for us to do is just say bye-bye.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Butterfly, butterfly, pretty butterfly. When I see you flap your wing, I know when it's time for spring. Butterfly, butterfly, pretty butterfly.